Right,
And
yeah,
we are
can go.
live. Only apologies for that. Technical difficulties as I've never used StreamYard before, so sorry for the embarrassing blip. Hello and welcome to We Follow the Town, the weekly podcast both previewing and reviewing Ipswich Town's games. And to kick us off, to review our triumphant win over Blackpool, we have our very own stat man, Luke Penning. But before we get started, I just wanted to talk about inclusiveness. At the end of the day, we all support the same club. And this is a new podcast. This is very much a passion project. So I just want to say that to all of those who are listening, anybody's welcome here, regardless of your background, where you are from, whether you edit different podcasts or not, because we are all one. And this is a podcast, as I just said, for everybody. Anyway, I'm going to get started. First of all, Luke, I'll start off rather simple. How are you? And were you positive initially heading into Saturday's game?
Yeah, hi Ben. Yeah, I think with the deadline day signings that we'll get onto, I think there was an air of positivity in amongst the fan base because yeah, because with them coming in, it gives us positivity to see someone new because with the team with how it's been playing recently, there hasn't been that many new faces. So having people come in, they're going to change things around the club and around the team, and we saw that. We'll get onto that, but we'll see. We saw what the players coming in will do for us going forward.
So, first things first, let's talk about the gossip heading into the game because a talking point of the game was the fact that Luke Chambers was dropped to the bench. Mick Mills said on BBC Radio Suffolk that this could very well be the beginning of the end for Luke Chambers. Now, is it fair to say that? And how much of a fantastic servant has he been for the club?
Yeah, I don't think his loyalty can be understated. To be honest, he's been here for over 340 games around that. He's served us for 7, 8 years. I think the claim that people can put on him is the fact that we've not really had much success whilst he's been here, and I think they unfairly sometimes label the decline of the club with obviously the captain. But he's played at centre half, he's played at right back, and he's always been available. That he's the kind of player that never very rarely gets injured. He's always
Yeah, I was about to say that. Really.
yeah, very rarely gets injured. He's always around. I think having someone like that in the club, I think the issue maybe some people feel is that he has too much authority. The fact that he wasn't happy with Paul Hurst and Paul Hurst got sacked, that kind of thing. But yeah, I don't think he can be understated as a player for what he's done at the team, in the sense that his time at ITFC might be up. I think with someone like Luke Matheson coming in on loan from Wolves, who plays in the right back position, I think always felt that Matheson would start the game at Blackpool, but I think most or some predicted Chambers to come in at centre half alongside maybe McGuinness, because we know that Lambert likes to drop Wolfenden a lot, and maybe we didn't necessarily see Wolfenden and McGuinness having a partnership with Chambers with Matheson coming in. I think that is something that we have missed a lot this season, having attacking threats from fullback. It was one of my cynicisms at the beginning of the season around Stephen Ward, and as good as experienced player he has been in the Championship and has Premier League experience, having two 35-year-olds at right back and left back throughout the season was always going to have its tolls. It's going to have good moments as well. We saw when they started. You think of the return fixture at Bloomfield Road when Chambers scored a brilliant goal, and Ward's been involved in various assists and moves for goals earlier on the season. You saw it with Ward as well. When he got injured, he came back. He wasn't the same player really. Chambers himself, he started well, and is his old age regressing? Is he regressing at old age? We're so used to seeing him play at centre half, where there's less physical burden on him to really get forward and drive the team up the pitch. And I think his effectiveness at doing that was faltering within the last couple of weeks. So I think bringing in loanees, someone like Matheson, who we'll get onto, is definitely a sign of things to come. Obviously, with Matheson potentially not here next season, obviously because he's on loan. It'd be interesting to see. Obviously, we've got Kane Vincent Young, who's unfortunately had another setback this week. If there's any other further recruitment in that area, whether they trust someone from the under 23s to come in and get involved, it depends where we are. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Chambers is one of many out of contract players in the summer, so yeah, it will be an interesting one to see what happens.
So let's talk about Cole Skuse as well, because Cole Skuse is very much lumped in with Luke Chambers when we talk about old players. He's also up at the end of his contract, so he's also up at the end of the summer. And he is a player who very much is on the outside of the squad. Once he's back from injury, will he properly get back into the squad? Now, should we keep Luke Chambers, and would he be a worthy figure in the squad to keep around?
Yeah, I honestly think it really depends on what league we're in next season. Based on how things are going currently, without having really much positivity in terms of we're going to get promoted really, because we haven't really beaten the team around us in terms of the top 6 sides. Have it on face value that we're in League One next season, as an idea anyway. You looking at your centre half partnerships, you've got Wolfenden there, had champion or Premier League interest. You've got James Wilson, he's out of contract this summer. Enciala, who was linked potentially with loan moves in the window, and then obviously you've got Chambers as well, and obviously Elkan Baggott coming through. With the salary cap, you'd like to think that maybe one of Wilson or Chambers is kept here. You're starting to see it now with Cole Skuse, as you mentioned, that he's been playing well the last couple of years. He's been playing good number of appearances, but obviously he's not really a player like Chambers that gets a lot of injuries. So when he gets an injury and misses basically half the season, at his age, just starting to be a bit concerned about what does this mean for Cole Skuse? The fact that he most recently take up a coaching role at St Joseph's College in Ipswich does give me the idea that he's looking to get his coaching badges, or at least make the start on that journey. And for someone like Cole, who's out of contract in the summer, much like Luke, I would expect Cole to be released. Obviously, yeah, you've got Cohen and Darber as well. Stephen mentioned in the comments here. I think there's a lot of, you've got Baggott and that, and then Darber playing through. Funnily enough, Darber's actually been playing as a left back. He played there in the trophy for us against Gillingham, and has been playing there for Ayr United.
On the bench for Ayr on Friday, he actually played quite well. So
yeah, he
anyway,
played.
Talking about Darber, because actually that's quite an interesting thing to really talk about. I was talking the other day on the podcast with Stephen Lancaster, and he said he doesn't really understand why players like Darber are going out on loan. Is he a player who we should really just be trying to fit into the first team squad, especially at the back, where we have a whole load of old legs? Elkan Baggott is probably the youngest we have. So again, isn't Darber a player that we should really be keeping and slotting into the back of our defence?
Yeah, I totally think, some worry about the young partnership that we currently have at the moment with Mark McGuinness and Luke Wolfenden. They're both relatively young defenders in terms of minutes. Obviously, Wolfenden has a season under him here and a season at Swindon, as well as experience at Bromley. But commonly, the defence is relatively young when you look at those two that played in the last game. Corin and Darber was a player that I half expected to get a chance this season, to be completely honest. I remember him coming on as a sub in the Bristol Rovers Cup game at the beginning of the season. He played in the EFL Trophy against Arsenal before he come off injured, and yeah, was playing well. I've been watching him play in the under-23s for the last couple of years, and I think he was originally a centre defensive midfielder, but has obviously been converted to centre half and now playing at left back, as I mentioned. He's comfortable on the ball, strong in the tackle and that kind of thing, and does complement a lot of what we would need to use a kind of possession style passing of play. But I do think bringing in someone like Mark McGuinness and probably having a certain agreement in there is the reason why Corey for himself has been loaned out to Ayr. I think I would much rather someone like him get first team football elsewhere rather than being sitting in the under 23s, because it gives him no benefit going forward. So
Yeah.
if he plays, their season this season has been shortened due to COVID. It's only in 27 games. I think they're about 13 in at the moment in the Scottish Championship. So if he can play the rest of the season as well as he started the season for Ayr, come back a better player. Obviously, you're not really going to have Mark McGuinness here next season. Obviously, with the cap, if we're still in League One, there's going to be less money banded about for signings, and the quality of signings that maybe we're used to getting. Championship loans, that kind of thing, is not really going to be the case anymore. So, using the academy is going to be something that we need to utilise more.
So let's talk about our new loan signings. Luke Thomas, Josh Harrop, Troy Parrott and Luke Matheson have all joined the club on loan. You're probably very familiar with these players. First of all, who are you looking forward to seeing the most? I know we saw them on Saturday. And who do you think could have the biggest impact on our first team squad?
Yeah, I think for me, the person that I'm looking forward to, was looking forward to seeing the most, was Luke Matheson. I think, as mentioned previously on here in previous other podcasts, I think that having, since we lost Kane Vincent-Young to injury, we've lost that attack and threat from fullback, as mentioned as well. Chambers and Ward don't really offer that. So to have someone like Luke Matheson, who's very capable defensively, also attacking wise, it offers a little bit of something different. You could only see last season when Kane Vincent-Young got injured that we were playing Gwion Edwards in that position, and it just wasn't the same. So having someone like Luke, obviously the fact he's not contracted to our club, which is obviously something that we all want to see our own play sort of thing, but with Matheson, he has a bit of everything. As I said, he's good at defensively, he can drive us up the pitch. I put up a little thing on my Twitter account earlier on that he got a 7.2 on SofaScore, which is a site that uses stats and that sort of thing, and he got 3.0 tackles and 3.0 I think interceptions for us yesterday in the game. And if he continues the form he's playing, he's going to be consistently one of the best defenders we've got at the club. Obviously, if he keeps up, that is, with someone as young as he is at 18, there's going to be peaks and troughs. In terms of someone that could prove important to us, I think you've got to look at Josh Harrop maybe and Troy Parrott. Obviously, we haven't scored many goals all season really. I think you could put that down to maybe the injury of Norwood not playing as much as he really wanted to. You look at Parrott coming in from Spurs. He had 13 appearances for Millwall, wasn't able to score a goal. I know some people say that he's had an assist, but I look back and that was actually, he got fouled for a penalty. So I think he's got a lot to prove, and I think he played really well. Obviously he didn't get really a chance to score a goal, but his link-up play, how he brought up his interplay, he likes to get in them goal-scoring positions. If we stick crosses in the box, he's always going to be there. In terms of Harrop, he came through the Man United's youth academy. He played in their last game of the season before he went to Preston. He had struggled with injuries, but he came on the other day. He looked bright. Probably was unfortunate not to get on the end of a James Norwood chance, but you look at those that potentially add something different. Also, we've got Luke Thomas, who since coming in has blown, I guess, a little bit hot and cold. I was made aware that at Barnsley he was lacking with confidence, so I was a bit sceptic to see how he'd do in goal scoring opportunities. Against Sunderland, he had a shot the keeper easily saved, and obviously against Blackpool he had a shot that maybe he should have done a little bit better with. But with games in time, he's going to be the player. I hope he will be, if he replicates the 17-18, I think it was the 17 or was it 18-19 loan spell at Coventry, where he got 6 goals and 4 assists from the right hand side, cutting in on his left foot. We saw yesterday what the loan players can do to our team, and if we play consistently like that, like we need to, I think there will be positives going forward.
But are these loan players any better than what we already have? Because Jack Lancaster, in my opinion, isn't any better than Luke Thomas. So there is an argument to be made that, no, we should be playing our own players, not these young loanees from other clubs.
Yeah, I totally agree in some aspects. I think, Luke Matheson is probably an exception because I don't think that Paul Lambert or anyone at the club currently sees people like Barry Cotter, who's had bit part appearances at us, and Dylan Crowe, who's had to deal with injuries, really come into to make the right back spot their own. Obviously, we really wanted to see maybe Coyne and Darber coming in, but he's not really your first choice right back. I think you are right, really. You see people like Idris El Mazouni going back out on loan to Grimsby to join up with Paul Hurst, and Jack Lancaster being linked to moves to Salford on deadline day. You think of these players, why these players not playing? Every time I've seen Jack play, he's been the kind of guy that has always been, willingness to get forward, likes creating chances. I remember when he came back from injury this season, played against Bristol Rovers, came off the bench, got 2 assists. Scored against Sunderland in the game that we played at the Stadium of Light and has looked well. Obviously, he's been drafted around in different positions this season. He's played as a central midfielder, number 10 and the right winger. Personally, I'd like to see him on the right side of midfield. I think that's where I've seen his best football. I remember in his breakthrough season where he came in and scored a brilliant goal against Millwall. Played a lot that season and was unlucky not to score a free kick late on against West Brom. They're the kind of players that you want to see playing minutes. Armando Dobra, one that maybe I think would benefit from a loan spell. I think he needs to learn the men's game a little bit more, but there are players there that can go on and add something different to our team going forwards. Obviously, you look at the loans that we've come in, they're loans from Premier League, Championship clubs, and I think as well as it isn't good in the short run, maybe I would have, maybe preferred some of the youngsters to go out on loan and get men's football, because I think, with someone like Thomas, he's very rarely going to get dropped, really. You've got Bennett's in the team now, you've got 6 loans, you can only name 5 in a matchday squad, so it does create a lot of, opportunities maybe for some players to come in. I think Lancaster maybe could be on the bench or maybe should play in the next game. We'll talk a bit about that later on. But I think, it is a double-edged sword, really. You want your young players to be playing for you. But at the end of the day, if the recruitment team and the manager bring in players that they feel like are better in their eyes to our ones, unfortunately, that's something that we have to deal with in the short term. But hopefully in the long term, we see the rewards of the players like Idris El Mazouni, Armando Dobra, Coyne and Darber, Jack Lancaster, and many more come through into the team and play consistently for us.
So Stephen Parry brought up a very interesting point. With Paul Lambert under pressure, would he be risking his job on playing our own young lads?
Yeah, I think that is a good comment to maybe make. I think that with young players, especially playing our own, they're going to make mistakes. The same we've seen before with Wolfenden making, starting this season a little bit sluggishly, and Mark McGuinness having a couple of questionable performances. But at the same time, that's part of their development. When you're a young player, you're not going to have a 7 out of 10 each game. You're not always going to have that good performance every game. But I think the risk of playing the loanees that we've got now over our own, it probably isn't that much because they're around the same age. They're not experienced players that have really played, apart from Thomas that's played about 60, 70 games for Barnsley and loan spells that he's had, and Parrott, he's played 13 games. You can't really say much into that. But all the others, they're new coming into the game as well, which I think where that claim about having them the manager being under pressure, is he going to play our younger players? I don't think there's much difference, in my opinion, in reference to that, because, as I said, our players are as inexperienced in men's football as they are. So I think if they're more than happy to pay people like Mark McGuinness, who's in his first senior season of men's football, then playing people like, Dylan Crowe, for example, or Elkin Baggett, there's no difference there. And I think that's something that comes in a player's developmental cycle, is the peaks and troughs, the good moments and the bad. It makes players in their career when they're playing consistently. You don't learn men's football from playing the odd game. You play then, you get dropped, you play in about 3 weeks' time. It's the consistent playing time that improves a player going forward.
Yeah, just spot on. And in my opinion, our own young players need that playing time. But anyway, let's get on to the match review. Of course, we won against Blackpool. As I said, skipper Luke Chambers was dropped to the bench along with 5-goal joint top scorer Gwion Edwards. Paul Lambert handed debut to our new loan signings, Luke Matheson and Troy Parrott, and Stephen Ward was also on the bench making way for Matheson. Wolfenden and McGuinness both played as centre halves, with Miles Kenlock also playing at the back. Thomas Holy played in goal. Blake Downs took the captain's armband, so maybe potentially a future captain right there, and he played alongside Andre Dazelle with Alan Judge playing right in front of him. Troy Parrott played up front with both Freddie Sears on the left and Thomas on the right, and Harrop was in the town 18 following his bout with COVID-19. We lined up using a 4-3-3. Many people thought it was a 4-4-2, although where does Caden Jackson, once he's back from injury, where does he fit in this squad?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point to make, really. With Troy Parrott coming in on loan and, James Norwood, arguably your best striker at the club, you look at Caden Jackson as to where he's really going to fit in, because you think that there's going to be a favouritism. Well, you think with Parrott coming in on loan from Spurs, he's going to be guaranteed a certain number of games. He's already been guaranteed that he's going to be playing up front. We've got Norwood as well, who obviously they're not really going to risk coming back from injury starting every game. So having him and Parrott that they can switch in does give questions for Caden Jackson. You look to the fact that on deadline day there seemed to be a late bid from Huddersfield for him, and from what I read online, there seemed to be a willingness for the club to accept it, but the bid just ended up being too late. So it does seem an interesting question. He's out of contract in the summer, but he does have an option. So that if they don't see him in their future plans, they might be willing to take the option and then sell him on for $1 million or so. There seemed that the fee banded around by Huddersfield anyway for the loan fee with an option to buy. Obviously, with Parrott coming in on loan, he's not our own player. So when he leaves, at the end of the season, does Jackson's situation change? But with interest, championship interest being there for him, I wouldn't be surprised if he's not here next season.
So where did it go wrong for Jackson? Because last season, in my opinion, he had a really good season, but this season he's almost never really hit the ground running. So where did it go wrong for him? Does he have a future at this club?
Yeah, I think it comes down to a lot of things, really. I think when Caden Jackson came into the club, when Paul Hurst brought him in, he came into the Championship, and as soon as Paul Lambert came in, he played the 4-3-3 formation. And I've always felt that Caden Jackson struggles to deal with the physical burden put on him by playing up front by himself. As quick as he is, I don't think. Well, in recent times he's probably improved it from what I've seen, but originally he wasn't. He always struggled playing up as a lone front man. Last season, when Norwood came in, I think the form of both of those in pre-season gave Lambert a card really to do a 4-4-2, and I think in the 4-4-2 formation, Caden Jackson and James Norwood worked the best of each other. James Norwood could deal with the physical side of the game that Caden Jackson would struggle with, and therefore create space for Caden Jackson to thrive in the 4-4-2 formation. Obviously, without that this season, we haven't seen the best of Caden Jackson. Ultimately, he has had COVID, and he has had an injury as well. But in recent games, he's been playing off the right. He's not been the same player because, in my opinion, Caden Jackson's trait is his pace, but it's not when he starts running. It's once he's in his stride. It's the willingness to speed up from then on. When he was playing out wide against Swindon, he'd always get the ball in stride. For him, it's when he's already in stride that it works better for him as a player. So playing out right doesn't work for him. As Stephen Parry mentioned in the comments, it doesn't suit the formation. He looks frustrated. Yeah, as I said, the 4-4-2 formation when it came in last season, because of the form of them both, it worked well for both of them. But with Paul Lambert in charge, he doesn't see the 4-4-2, as he's in his words, he says we're hopeless there. I don't think that sees that coming back anytime soon. And as a result, I don't know where that sees Caden Jackson. And as I said, I would not be surprised to see him here next season because of this issue. He's not getting the best out of Caden Jackson in this formation. He won't go back to a 4-4-2, which works so well for him. So, what options is there?
Yeah, and as you said, for some reason Paul Lambert does not like the 4-4-2, and we do have the players to play it. Jackson, Parrott up front. But anyway, let's talk about Blackpool a minute, because Blackpool had Town ex-players playing for them. They had Luke Garbuff on the bench, he was on loan last year from Everton. And they also had Grant Ward. Elliot Templeton, who came off the bench for Sunderland a few weeks ago, also started for them. And they also lined up Blackpool with a 4-4-1-1. Anyway, the rain was hammering down for the first 10 minutes, and Ipswich were in control, with Parrott making runs in behind the defence. From the line back and centre cross over to the right, but was unable to find a teammate. On the 12th minute, we saw signs of things to come. Wolfenden found Kenlock with a cross-filled ball, and the left-back found Judge, who broke into the area and hit a shot wide. First 10 minutes, we are dominating the game. How do you think we performed in the first 10 minutes? Do you think that, as I just said, it was signs of things to come? Do you reckon we were the better team?
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting recently. In recent weeks, we've seen Town start bright, but they haven't been able to capitalise on it. I think the same happened in this instance. There were a lot of bright moments in the beginning of the game. As I said, Luke Thomas had a chance early on that he probably should have scored, and obviously we can talk about the offside or onside goal. But I think that is something that has happened in the last couple of games, really. We have started well, we look like we're creating things, we don't capitalise it. Fortunately for us in this case, it didn't come back to bite us in the back, but Blackpool had chances themselves. They had a couple of shots, one which Holy had to save as well. So I think we started well, but even watching the game, there was a worry about, we're playing well, but we're not scoring.
Yeah, it was very similar to Crewe last weekend, because last weekend we started very well, had 4 corners in the opening 10 minutes, but we didn't go on to win. But anyway, talking about Blackpool getting into the game, I can't pronounce that name, Ekpiteta, I probably absolutely butchered it, but he headed a free kick just wide. And Miles Kenlock received his first yellow card of the season a few minutes later. On the 34th minute, we had our best opportunity of the game so far, when the ball was played down low to Luke Thomas on the edge of the box. He ultimately scuffled the ball wide, and he didn't score. But has Luke Thomas been impressing you? Because last weekend against Crewe, he was hit and miss, really. He made some amazing runs. He went forward very, very well, but ultimately we haven't really seen any end product in his game so far.
Yeah, I kind of agree. As I said, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, in reference to Luke Thomas, he's a player that has clearly been lacking of confidence at Barnsley. He was played as a number 10 and wanted to be played out wide. Unfortunately for us Town fans, we haven't been able to see his best side at the moment. I think that's where the claims for Lancaster coming in comes from, because from what they've seen, they probably expected to see a player that's been playing consistently, whether that be from the bench or playing about 45 minutes in games, that would hit the ground running. And I half expected that, to be honest, but unfortunately that hasn't happened. As you're saying, he does do the right things. He gets himself in the right positions. It's just the end product. But I do have faith in him. I think that when he does score a goal, it will give him confidence and he'll score more, get more assists, that sort of thing. But until that goal comes, he needs to persevere with it. You see too much in football when players make chances, they miss them, they hide away. The stronger players in the game, they take the chances, they don't hide away. They have more chances than they score, and they get confidence from it. I think that's something that Luke Thomas needs to do. He, as I mentioned before, he had a chance at Sunderland, probably should have scored. Had a chance yesterday, probably should have scored. If he keeps doing what he's doing, it'll work out well for him in the long run. But that's the thing. It's all right saying the long run, but we need him to hit it in the short term, which is a concern. But I have faith in him to turn things around and play much better in the next couple of games.
But why are we signing players like Luke Thomas when they're not necessarily ready because, in my opinion, Lancaster's no better than him. Lancaster, controversial opinion, would probably score more than him. So maybe that is a debate to be had, as we were talking about earlier, actually.
Yeah, I think that is one to be had. I think whether it be now or the end of the season when what's happened. I think that'd be a good discussion to have. Really, if we end up, still being in League One and the lone players, people like Thomas not hitting the heights that we probably expected from them, that might be a question that we have as fans to ourselves, to the club, about recruitment. But at the same time, Lancaster, he should at least be on the bench. Really, you look at the people not being favoured at the moment. Emir Hughes nowhere to be seen. John Nolan nowhere to be seen. As I mentioned, you got Keenan Bennett, but because he's a lone player, he can only fit 5 in the first team squad, and he's the 6th one, so he can't play. Having someone like Sears, who people don't necessarily see his career at Ipswich beyond the end of this season because he's out of contract as well. And there was obviously interest from him, Colchester, early in the window. Having someone like,
he's very good off the ball, though, isn't he? Like, Sears is very good off the ball, and he'll do more off the ball than he'll do on the ball, which ultimately helps the players around him.
Yeah, I think I kind of agree. I think the last couple of years maybe he hasn't scored as much. Obviously, the relegation season that he played in, he was our best scorer in that season. Did really well. I think unfortunately for him, the injury has hit him hard, and he doesn't look the same player. I think for me, I don't feel confident for him in one-on-one situations in terms of that running at defenders. Normally, that blister and pace that he once had was a weapon, much like Jackson, you could say. But he seems to have lost that and confidence. But he was much better on Saturday. The best I've seen from him from a while, to be completely honest. And obviously he was unfortunate not to have a goal. But I think that. But you think of a lot of players, really, the players that are out of contract in the summer. They have a big couple of months left of the season to show the deservance for a contract. Really, you look at the same for people like Emir Hughes, who's not currently getting in the side. Where does that leave him? Probably, unfortunately, getting released. But yeah, as I was saying, the people that are currently out of contract in the summer, people like Sears, I think Judge as well, they need to play consistently as they did yesterday and keep that going forward, because it's all right playing well yesterday. You've got Peterborough coming up, you've got Shrewsbury coming up, you've got other top 6 sides coming up that you need to win and put in performances again. So if you can put those performances in against the teams coming up and keep that consistent until the end of the season, good. Nobody knows what's going to happen, but it says it in a positive way anyway.
So talking about missed opportunities, on the 39th minute, Parrott played in Freddie Sears. He took the ball wide to Maxwell. He put the ball in the back of the net, but unfortunately Freddie Sears was offside. Now, was that an offside goal? Because many people were saying no, it wasn't. Or was the ref right to, flag it?
I think it was a legitimate goal, personally. Obviously, as fans, we can only see one angle of it. I've seen it clipped up on Twitter as well. For me, he looks completely onside. I think the goal should have stood. I think that is a thing where it might be a good thing, a bad thing, but we don't have VAR in League One. Without being able to overturn offsides and that sort of thing, there's nothing we can really do. It is something in this league we don't have. We don't have goal line technology. We don't have VAR. So unfortunately, it wasn't a goal. But luckily, as we got onto, we score a goal soon. But without that, that would have maybe been a bit of an unjustified maybe draw or loss if Blackpool had gone on and scored, or if we'd not scored ourselves.
Yeah, I'm talking about not making our chances pay. Luckily, we did score. Our first goal of the game came on the 43rd minute, and it was a lovely strike by Alan Judge, who got on the end of Miles Kenlock's pass and struck the ball low into the left corner from 20 yards out. It was a lovely finish, and I'm actually quite happy for Alan Judge because he gets a lot of shtick from our fan base. Now, first of all, your thoughts on the goal, and as we're on it, your thoughts on his performance in the first half.
Yeah, I think the goal was actually pretty good, really good work. It shows what having an attacking fullback, or at least someone that likes to get forward in Miles Kenlock, who has a nice drive and run, cuts inside, puts a long raking pass forward to Judge, who has composure to keep the ball and shoots it early, and which is what puts off Chris Maxwell in the Blackpool goal. He scores a really good goal. I think actually got goal of the day on Quest, serves me right. But yeah, I think with Alan Judge, there was a lot of optimism when he came into the club in his in our relegation season. Coming from Brentford and then signing permanently, that sort of thing. I think his consistency is something that hasn't been there as much as probably fans expected or wanted to. They see the Alan Judge of 6-7 years ago, 5-4-3 years ago at Brentford, scoring goals on the edge of a Premier League move. Unfortunately, hadn't had a tackle from Luke Hyam, which derailed his progress, and he was out injured for a while. But it's good to see him playing yesterday and playing well. This is the Alan Judge in I think he played in the 8, but the 8 and the 10 where he has played in positions has worked well for him. The last time we saw him in that position, or at least in the 10 anyway, played against Swindon and he played really well. So I think a lot of people's gripes maybe with Judge is the fact that he likes to drift around the pitch, and when he's played out wide, if he's not there, he's not supporting the fullback defensively, then that's where problems come. But I think in the 8, in the 3 that he played, replacing Bishop, or in the 10 further up the pitch where he can drift around, drop into pockets, create space, that sort of thing, I think that's his game. That's what he does well. With Bishop being suspended and coming back next game, you'd like to think that the team that we played against Blackpool is the team that we stay with on Peterborough, and Judge keeps his place. If he plays as well as he did against Blackpool and gets the support, as Stephen mentioned, the players around him, he needs people around him, the same as the striker. We saw yesterday how having people around other players won't make them isolated, it will create good things. So if Judge can keep up what he's been doing in this game further forward, and as I mentioned, I think he's out of contract to the end of the season as well. He needs to keep up those appearances and performances going forward to earn him a deal. But based on the performance that he had against Blackpool, I see no reason why he can't do that on a more regular basis.
And he does have that in his locker, because I was very happy to see when he played this weekend. That is his natural position. I think he enjoyed playing that role, and as I just said, he does have the ability to change a game, and he did change the game over the weekend. But anyway, we come to half time, and when we come back after half time, we are still dominating the game. Gazelle works his way into the box and finds Sears, who hits a shot at Maxwell, but it is palmed out for a corner. And this is where our second goal comes from. Gazelle manages to take the corner. He manages to find Wolfenden, who nods the ball home from inches away. And that was his very first goal for the club. First of all, thoughts on the goal, and how happy are you for Luke Wolfenden that he scored his first goal for Town?
Yeah, I thought the goal was good, really. I think it was a nice cross. Ryan Hardy from Blackpool tried to launch his head up to try and defend the ball, and then Luke Wolfenden scored. I think he scored against Lincoln at home last season from a header, if my memory serves me correctly. So I think it's his second goal at the club.
Goal, yeah.
But yeah, I think it's good for him. A lot of people maybe have been a bit sceptic of him, whether that be through form or him not playing as much this season. I think that having him playing and scoring quite a lot recently, scoring in this game anyway, it gives him a lot of confidence going forward. So I think for Luke Wolfenden, it's a good thing because it gives him confidence, gives him positivity, and if we can score many headed goals, because that is something that we've lacked going forward this season from corners and free kicks, is people not scoring as much. So if he can keep that in the next couple of games going forward, it'll be a key and important player for us.
And he's struggled so far this season, because he was very critical of Paul Lambert in a post-match press conference, and I think that angered Paul Lambert a bit, to the point where he actually dropped him to the bench. But hopefully this goal does provide him with the impetus to actually carry on performing, because he's one of our own. He's a great player, and he's a great personality as well to have in the squad. So Ipswich Town should have made it 3-0 in the 56th minute. Judge's corner from the left skimmed off Mark McGuinness's head, and ultimately Wolfenden couldn't get on the end of it. Maxwell was actually sent off in 2018 when we played Preston, if you remember that, and he could have been sent off again. Maxwell arrived late and sent Parrott flying inside the visitor's own half. Should he have been sent off, Maxwell? He was only given a yellow card, but many people felt it should have been a red card.
Yeah, he has got the reputation of a reckless challenge, has Chris Maxwell. I was at that game. I think it was Paul Lambert's first home game in charge against Preston, when he was in goal for them. Yeah, I think Parrott does well because he goes past the defence. He's on the run. You can see he's going to get to the ball before Maxwell, and I think that is a similar thing to what happened in that Preston game. Because if I remember correctly, in that game, Jordan Roberts did a similar thing for us when he was playing up front, and Maxwell clipped him then, and he only got booked in that game. So I can see it, but at the same time, does he really need to be there? They both have eyes for the ball. We know that Parrott's going to get there beforehand, and it is a bit reckless from his part. So it could go either way really. But at the end of the day, the keeper, in my opinion, has a reputation for doing that in the past, and getting a player running at him like that, there's no need to make the challenge. So in my opinion, red probably was maybe a call that could have been made, but at the same time, having him booked for just a yellow card is probably fair as well.
If we weren't 2-0 up, do you think that would have been a red card? Because we're 2-0 up, the referee might give it a benefit of a doubt maybe and say, okay, they're 2-0 up, we won't give you the red card.
Yeah, I think you could agree with that as well. I think the fact that we were two goals up in the game, comfortable, you could say maybe a 1-0 up, maybe the ref makes the decision, because you generally get it in football. If a team are a couple of goals up, they tend to be more reluctant with rash decisions, whether it be red cards, penalties, that sort of thing. So yeah, I think maybe if we were just 1-0 up, maybe he would have gone for the red, but as I was saying, it could have been either of them really.
So 3 minutes later, we make substitutes. Edwards comes on for Thomas, who had a mixed performance out there, and we see the debut of Josh Harrop. In my opinion, he had a very good final 20 minutes to the game, and I thought he made a positive impact out there on the field. Agreed?
Yeah, I agree. I think that Josh Harrop coming on, replacing Luke Thomas, going more centrally as well. I think Sears going out wide. I think it worked well. For us, I think he was probably unlucky to not get on the end of a James Norwood chance, where James Norwood ran down the flank, put a nice little ball into to Harrop, who missed the ball. Unfortunately, it came to Edwards, who I think then was tackled by Ekapita. But I think Harrop offers something different. He was brought in to add creativity to our side, and I think he could do the similar of what previous loans have done. People like Tom Lawrence, Ryan Fraser, Selena of most recent years, having someone like Harrop coming in who can offer creativity, and he's also good from dead ball situations in terms of free kicks. So I think we saw a sign of what we can expect from Harrop going forward, but also as well as Judge played, he's going to keep his place. So when Harrop comes on, obviously after COVID as well, if you can come on, get a couple of assists, get a goal, it'll breed his confidence going forward, and we'll see the best Josh Harrop that we can.
So, to close out the game, we haven't really got much more to talk about. Holy suffered a nasty blow to the face when Gabriel found his way in on goal, chasing the low bouncing ball. Holy got there first, but was kicked or booted in the face, by Gabriel. And we were able to hang on to the game and ultimately continued our good record at home to Blackpool. We've already spoken about this game in a lot of detail, but what did you think of the game, and is it a good win? Could we maybe turn it around?
I think it is much needed after a recent run of poor results. Obviously, we had Burton win, but since then, it's a recent run of poor results. I think with Blackpool early on the season, we won the game 4-1. We won this one 2-0. I support my team whether they win, lose, or draw. It's the kind of fan I am, and I was pleased when we won the game because it breeds confidence. As mentioned before, seeing lone players coming in, playing well, it's what you want to see. You want to see your team playing well. But at the same time, I don't want to be too confident about us as a team winning this game, because at the end of the day, we're mid-table, they're mid-table. We beat them early on in the season in our good run of form. We've got Peterborough coming up on Tuesday, weather permitting. They're the kind of games that we will see if things have changed. It's all right playing against teams like Blackpool, who are in mid-table at the moment, and winning against teams early on in the season like Rochdale and Shrewsbury. But our season, in my opinion, is really judged on the willingness to beat the top six sides, and we haven't been able to do that last season and this season. We lost twice against Sunderland. Haven't done well against Lincoln away really in recent seasons. So coming to Peterborough, a game that I was at last season, I think it was a 2-2 draw. Coming off the back of a 1-0 defeat due to a Mark McGuinness own goal. They're the games that I feel we need to be judged on. I think it's too early to really say after one game against Blackpool if we're going in the right direction, because if we lose against Peterborough, beat Shrewsbury, it'll be the case of, well, you're beating Shrewsbury, you're beating Blackpool, but you can't beat the teams that really matter. And even if we were to get promoted through beating the lower to mid-table sides and getting in the playoffs, even then, if you get into the playoffs, you're really going to have faith to beat the playoff teams, because they're the teams that we can't beat in the regular season. So what makes us think that we can beat them in the playoffs? I think, as well as it us winning this game, and I'm pleased that we won, we need to keep our horizons broadened in the sense that there's more important games coming up that we need to win. And it breeds us confidence. You see Matheson doing well. You see Parrott being encouraging. You see Harrop come off the bench. You're seeing Judge get a goal. They're good things to happen, but I think they need to take it to the games going forward. I think a lot. We started well this season, but since then it's the consistency. It's been able to win consistent games, put in complete performances. If we do that on a regular basis going until the end of the season, our outlook, our position in the league could be different. But could this be another false dawn? I don't know. We're going to have to wait until Peterborough to see.
So Stephen Parry says, still a lot to prove, and the damages for Paul Lambert might be too much regardless. Now, sticking on that topic, do you reckon Paul Lambert can turn around his career at Portman Road? Because we were talking before the podcast about PR Paul, and all the PR stuff he did before it all went sour. I remember him paying for the coach tickets up to Wigan. I remember him giving out free beer. So again, just to backtrack a little, can he turn it around?
In my opinion, I don't think he can. I think the damage has been done over a number of seasons now. You look at when he came in in the Championship. Paul Hurst had only played 15 games. He had a crazy amount of games to get us back, to keep us up in the league. We weren't even that low. We only needed a couple of wins at that stage to get us in, to potentially stay up. But that didn't happen. Obviously, the PR Paul, as we were talking about, got the fans on side. And we felt more attuned to the team than we had in probably the end of the Mick McCarthy era. Obviously, League One tour was banded about. A lot of people were expecting us to get 100 points, 100 goals. That didn't happen. We finished 11th in the league due to PPG. As mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, we started well that season and faded. We started well this season and faded. I remember last season, actually, we went on a bad run of form and we beat Burton Albion at home and won 4-1. And people were thinking, oh, maybe that's the turning point. We got all these goals out of nowhere. Ultimately, it was Burton at the time, but I think they were actually 10th in the league, so around the same position that Blackpool are now. And from then, everyone was like, oh, we could be turning things around here, but it didn't materialise. So hopefully, this time around, this win is it's a more positive chain going forwards. But based on the consensus of last season and how this season has been going, I don't see a particular change coming out. I think the loan recruitment of Parrott and Matheson on deadline day is encouraging. It will improve us, but having two players coming in, and we also got Thomas as well, that are going to change your team, I don't think so. It's a deep rooted.
Are they panic signings there? Do you reckon they're panic signings?
I think it's, I thought that, I half expected them to bring in a striker on deadline day because they'd mentioned about it for a while. We were linked with Will Swan from Nottingham Forest, who most recently actually went on loan to Port Vale in League Two, but we ended up going for Troy Parrott instead. It is a kind of, you think with Hawkins' injury, even though he hasn't played that much, you probably were going to bring in a striker anyway. With Kane Vincent-Young's injury and letting Donatian go out and loan to Fleetwood, you were going to bring in a right back because you knew that Vincent Young's not going to be back when you wanted him to be. So they're predictable signings in the sense that you needed them in them certain positions because they were needed. But at the same time, with Lambert's situation, fans wanting him gone, the paper officially calling for him to be sacked, and a lot of negativity surrounding the club. For me, it feels like the last turn of cards, or the last chance saloon really for Paul Lambert, in the sense that he's done everything he can do. He's brought in his deadline day signings, which I've mentioned in recent videos on my channel, that we're not really used to deadline day business at Ipswich Town. Obviously it's loan signings, not big fees, that kind of thing that we hope for. But at the same time, you could say they are panic signings because he needed to do something different. He's brought an 18-year-old from Wolves who came through Rochdale's team when he was 15. You brought in Troy Parrott after an unsuccessful loan at Millwall. There is an air of panic about them, but at the same time there are signings. As I mentioned, the striker because of Hawkins' injury, and with Jackson being suspended, you needed someone in there to give competition. And obviously at right back with Kane Vincent-Young having another breakdown and Donatian being loaned out, getting in a right back someone like Luke Matheson with attacking and defensive intent was needed. But there is an air of last chance saloon about it.
So does this also tell you that Marcus Evans isn't really pumping enough into the first team squad? Because in my opinion, I'd prefer for us to go out there and to buy these players, like maybe not at the level that we've actually brought in, but buy players from the lower leagues instead of blowing in Premier League Championship players.
Yeah, I agree really. I think that the club in terms of recruitment probably has been poor throughout the last couple of years. I think that's fair to say. I think that we have had some encouraging recruitment. You look at people like Gwion Edwards, who's come in from Paulhurst, looks really good player. Norwood, I think he's been unlucky with injuries really. You look at a lot of players that have come in, with Kane Vincent-Young as well. You haven't really had much injuries at their previous clubs come here, and it's a different story. But you look at people like Norwood, Kane Vincent-Young, Gwion Edwards have come in recent years, but that's three of them. That's not. You want to be going at the end of every transfer window and saying that every player you've bought in is going to improve what you already have and be a good signing. In my opinion, there's not enough emphasis on the future. It's always about the now. You look at Hawkins, he gets released by Portsmouth, comes in 28, 29, ultimately in the peak, but is he going to really change much of what we have? No. Brings in Stephen Ward, 35, wants someone with championship experience, fair enough, but is he really going to be here in the championship? If we get promoted, to the championship this season, we need people that can go on the journey with us.
Yeah, and would Stephen Ward start? Would he have a huge impact in the championship?
I wouldn't think that. You think next season, he's approaching 36, the same what we spoke with Chambers at the beginning as well. These are players entering the end of their careers. You're bringing in people like that, adds in experience, I know, but at the same time there's no degree of movement on the future. That's why I've in terms of potential managers coming in, that's why I've always been one to look a lot. It's all well and good saying Ipswich Town should appoint Nigel Pearson, Paul Cook, Danny Cowley for example, but it's about looking into their managers to see if their philosophies match what I feel Ipswich Town could be. And I think the Cowleys are one where there seems to be a lot of confusion, maybe cynicism around their style of football, and I think rightly or wrongly it's been brought in because they see an old Lincoln side with Matt Reed pumping it up along, but I think they've evolved as coaches. You see them talk about the game, through coach's voice on YouTube, them sort of things. They're very knowledgeable of it. They have values. They bring in players to represent the values of the fans. They've got very good recruitment at Lincoln. They brought in Josh Vickers from Swansea on a free transfer, then Premier League side. brought in Harry Toffolo from Norwich, then Premier League side, on a free transfer. Harry Toffolo went to Huddersfield with them. Josh Vickers was at Lincoln. I think he's now at Rotherham. They're players that they brought in to do well. They brought in Theo Robinson, who had championship experience at Derby. He played well for Lincoln. And at Huddersfield as well, they played well. As Stephen Parry mentioned there, they played well at Huddersfield. Their goal was to keep them up keep them up in the championship. Jan Sievert was sacked. They brought in the Cowleys. They kept them up in the league. But ultimately, I think Lee Bromby was their director of football, if my memory serves me correctly. And he wanted to change the direction, hence why they brought in the Leeds under-23 coach, Carlos Corberán. But everywhere in most recent years, the Cowleys they've had success. They had success at Lincoln, they had success at Concord. They probably didn't have the success they wanted at Braintree when they were starting out, but they got Braintree to their highest ever finish and got to the playoff semi-final in the National League. In the National League, unfortunately losing out to Paulhurst Grimsby Town, but had success at Lincoln from getting them to league from the National League to League 2 to League 2 to League 1, and obviously winning the EFL trophy in their time there as well. And obviously, as I said, meeting all the expectation at Huddersfield by keeping the team up. They did well by bringing in the loans that they did there. So bringing in someone like that, in my opinion, would be what we need, because we don't currently have, as far as I'm aware, we don't currently have a director of football. We've got Marcus Evans, who does what he does. We've got Leo Neal.
I think we've lost you.
Who's the director thing, covers more the commercial side. But at the same time, we don't have the director recently been on gardening leave, and we never hear about him. And the Cowleys have been the kind of people where Danny and Nicky themselves are very visioned on what they want to achieve at a club. They like to take an audit. It's not like talking to a fan group or a tea lady and just saying what's wrong with the club. They're kind of like more interview based. They'd like to find out what's actually wrong with the club so they can improve it for the better. They like to do recruitment. They like to do everything. And I think that's the problem at Huddersfield, was because Huddersfield wanted a coach who would operate under be a head coach and operate under a director of football. We don't have that here. We don't have that system. Ultimately, that is something that I would like us to do. You see, as much as I hate to say it, having someone like Webber at Norwich doing well for them under the director of football model would have been beneficial for us. Someone like that at the time. But who knows? Who knows what happens come the end of the season?
So, if you're the owner, we're going to go a bit off topic here. Who would you appoint the next manager based off a long-term future, or would you literally hire a manager literally to get us up to the Championship? If he doesn't do well there, sack him. If that makes any sense at all.
For me, long-term future is something that we lack as a club. There's too many short fixes. I think that, in my opinion, we would have been in no worse position under Paul Hurst than under Paul Lambert. I think, maybe some of the decisions that he made by dropping Bart before the East Anglian derby and, selling Waghorn and McGoldrick and not bringing in a like-for-like replacement really with that quality, there was a couple of confusion there maybe. But at the same time, and Webster, but at the same time it's shaken up the culture really. We're so used for the same voices, the same kind of thing. And his way, he was bringing in lower league players because maybe in the back of his mind he thought that we might be in that position, that we could be fighting near the lower echelons of the league. And in a way that he was kind of applying the team to do that kind of thing. And he did something different. That when he first came in, the first thing that Paul Hurst said was that he wanted to change the recruitment style. He did that. What he did, and he was only there for 15 games, so it's really hard to judge him on what he was doing. But at the same time, I'm always the one that believes in getting a manager in for a long-term basis. There's too much short-term future on Ipswich Town. You look at Lambert coming in. Oh yeah, we're not going to bring in many loans. Brings in 6 loans this season. Brought in some loans last season. We need to trust our young ones. We need to bring in players probably around the age of 23, 24, between 22 and 26, I'd say. Primarily for first team, 24 and 26, and bring in players that are going to improve us, grow with the team. Because you look at people like Chambers, Scouse, Ward, people like that. They're coming to the twilight of their careers, and they need to be replaced. They need to be, do we look here now and see that there's players that are ultimately going to replace Chambers at centre half? No, because you've got Wolford in there, but you need someone with experience, someone 24, 26 that can come in.
Even as captain, sorry to interrupt, but even as captain, who's going to replace Chambers as captain? Okay, on the pitch he may not be playing his best football, but as a captain, as a role model for the youngsters, he's an excellent player.
Yeah, I think Flynn Downs for me would be the natural heir to Chambers in terms of captain. Obviously, there's a worry about his future, whether he's going to be here. West Ham were interested. He put in a transfer request. But I think, giving him the captaincy, if Chambers does leave or retires or whatever happens with him, giving him the captaincy shows a willingness to play the younger ones. And as you're saying, really, for those that are coming through, it shows that anything's possible for them because it's one of their own. He's still young himself. He come through the academy. He gets the captain armband. It shows a lot of positivity for them. But we'll see what happens anyway.
So Stephen Parry, he brings up a good point here. He said either the Cowleys or a director of football like Joe Royle or Kieran Dyer. Would you appoint either of those two as a director of football? Because in my opinion, that isn't a bad shout at all.
Yeah, I think that the Cowleys play a similar system to what we're playing now. They're very tuned to the system. They know the system like the back of their hand. So to bring in managers like them two would work. The director of football system with Joe Royle as director of football. He did manage the town as well and has got good links with Everton. They've got a couple of out-contract players that might be worth snapping up, one of which Nathan Broadhead potentially. And obviously Kieran Dyer. But I don't see Marcus Evans going for the director of football model. I think that it would benefit him in the long run if he was to do that, because Leo Neal, fans give him stick and that sort of thing, but he's in a role where he's basically doing a bit of everything. He needs to have one solitary focus and do what he's good at. He was the academy manager, he was a PE teacher, he's doing scouting in youth tournaments in Sweden, from what I heard on the Kings of Anglia podcast last year. So he's doing a bunch of different stuff which he shouldn't have to be doing, really. He needs to do the commercial side of the club, what he's good at doing, and if he does that well.
Is he good enough for those roles? Is he good enough to be a director of football? Is he the quality to be one? Because he hasn't got a background in football, has he?
No, I don't think he has. If you're a club like us and a forward-thinking club that want to be in the Championship, within reason, within ability, you have to appoint the best in class in the positions that you need them. So if you want to bring in a director of football operations, whatever that role is, or a director of football, you need to bring in the people as best you can within the roles that you can. As well as it's good to see someone like Leo Neal, who played for the club as a scholar, I think retired early, come back to the club, work in academy, and then now get this role in director of football operations. It does show a willingness to offer chances to our own, but at the same time, is there a role that Leo Neal can do that makes it better for him, where we can bring someone else in that might work better for us in the long term? But in my opinion, whilst Marcus Evans is here, I don't see him changing anything in terms of the structure. But I do feel that if another manager was to come in, whether it be the Cook, Nigel Pearson or the Cowleys, something would change in that department. Because I think that if we don't get up this season, there's probably more a long-term outlook on things because of the salary cap and how it forces us to recruit. Hopefully they're a bit more creative with our recruitment in the players that we get in the positions that we want. So that's just my opinion anyway.
Do you reckon there's reluctance from the board, especially from Marcus Evans, to change the system? Because we've had the same system basically since he's first come in. He's been very reluctant to change, Leo Neal, the people behind him, and that hasn't really benefited the club, has it?
No, I kind of agree. I think having the same player in squad, you could represent that to decline, as well as the staff and structure behind the manager and the owner. I think there definitely needs to be a shake-up. I think as fans, that's something that we want. We want something different. It's not working. We're not realistically going to get rid of Marcus Evans. He's not going to, sell the club to some Saudi Arabian billionaire. We need to be able to, as a club, be creative in our appointments. And if we bring in people, Norwich, when they brought in Webber for them, Ian Milner, former kind of director of football operations, if you want to call it that, chief executive, he was a bit apprehensive about the idea of bringing in a director of football. But look how well it's worked out for them. As much as I hate to say it, they're a club. Their recruitment is spot on. The players they bring in, the philosophies around them. Obviously, they've got this yo-yo aspects around them. Obviously, the young players, Max Aarons and Jamal Lewis, they're doing well for them and that kind of thing. But yeah, I think that would be good to have that kind of the similar kind of outlook on things. I agree. I agree with Stephen. The lack of football knowledge leaves a lot to the fans. If he's wrong, everyone is wrong. Yep. I think Yeah, I agree. I think that things need to change at the club, whether that be manager, the people under him, the owner. But I don't think the owner is going to happen. I think as long as he's keeping us as a club afloat, he's not going to pump the money in, which is why we need to be creative in the players that we do bring in and give chances to our own. Under the salary cap, there will be something that happens a lot. So, yeah.
And we're never going to go down under him. Even if we are in League Two, we'll never put our club in a position where we are going to go under, where we are going to struggle financially. But anyway, to end the show, I'm going to ask you for your predictions on the Peterborough game on Tuesday. Do you reckon we're going to win? Who would you like to see start for us? And what do you reckon the score will be?
Yeah, weather permitting, because obviously there's been some pretty bad snow in this area the last couple of days. I think that sticking with the same team that played against Blackpool is imperative for this one. I think it breeds consistency, shows a team that played well keep their places. In terms of the result for the game, obviously we look at Peterborough's recent form, hasn't really been that good. They've been scoreless in a couple of games. They haven't been winning a couple of games. They've been drawing quite a few. Obviously, they won yesterday. Smodic scored as well. I still have that bit of pessimism when it comes to watching us play against the top six sides. But if we play as well as we can, with the players that we can, and if the game acts its way out like we did against Peterborough last time, then I could see maybe a draw, but I could actually probably see a narrow win, but at very least a draw. But we need to be able to play that consistency. If you keep the same team, the same players, you've got Matheson offering that attack and threat down right back. You've got Judge in a more familiar position. You've got Harrop up there. You've got the wide options as well. It creates a different problem, which we didn't have against Peterborough a couple of weeks back. We had Drennan up front and Chambers at fullback, that sort of thing. So with a different team that we've been playing, well just for one game, but you know what I mean, playing up to Peterborough, it does give a different opportunity. But as much as I say that, if Peterborough on their game, like we know that they are, it'll be a hard game. But obviously without fans, potentially, what the pitch is going to be like, I don't know. But I feel a little bit more confident about the team going into the game, but it doesn't necessarily mean I think we're going to win. But I would much rather, as I'm feeling now, go into the game with a little bit more optimism. I wouldn't necessarily place that down on the manager though, more about the players that played and how well they did. But I've probably felt a bit more optimistic about the Peterborough game than I did a couple of weeks back.
And Stephen Parry agrees with you about sticking to the same team, and he says we can win 2-1. But anyway, I think that's a perfect way to end the show. Thank you very much to those who have tuned in or who have downloaded the podcast on iTunes or on any other platforms out there. And tomorrow I will be with Gabriel Sutton to preview the Peterborough game, and that should be a very good show. So join us at 7:30 for that. And yeah, thank you very much for coming on this podcast, Luke. I've really
Thank you for
enjoyed
listening,
having you
guys.
on. And goodbye. Once again, thank you very much.
See ya.